It's time for bed, Dee Dee. Go hop in bed. I'll be right in to tuck you in.
Good night, Daddy. What are you doing here?
Okay, sweetie. Night-night. What are you looking at?
I don't think she can see you.
Today, we are reviewing Contrast! Yay! Now I'm a bird! If you're into Canadian-developed indie games starring French, possibly imaginary, possibly acrobatic, platforming action that takes place on a 2D shadow plane that might be an alternate dimension, Contrast is the game for you. The game centers around a young girl named Dee Dee and her quest to help out her deadbeat father named Johnny. Her mother is a burlesque dancer named Kat.
Mocha chocolate, yeah.
Okay, but the good kind of burlesque.
And I knew right away that you would want me.
Now, admittedly, you could see this theme used in an animated movie, but there's some pretty dark things going on in this game. It's definitely geared towards an older audience. The art design is kind of Art Deco inspired, and the only two actual characters you see in the flesh are Dee Dee and Dawn, while the rest of the world has this very creepy kind of abandoned feel to it that lends to an overall atmosphere that I haven't seen in many games.
Be a shadow person.
So what are you doing in this game? It's a puzzle platformer with a pretty unique gameplay hook. So imagine you're Dawn and you're walking around on your 3D plane and you have lights in the foreground that'll project onto the character and cast a shadow, behind them. And you become a shadow character. You're in direct control of the shadow, but you can directly interact with the shadows of every object in the space. And you can actually move objects in the foreground to manipulate the shadows in order to solve certain puzzles. I know it sounds kind of complicated, but it works very, very well. Now, a lot of the puzzle solving in the game is classic tropes, such as taking a crate and putting it on a weighted platform, or trying to collect a certain number of luminaries in order to power up devices, in order to be able to get on to the next area. But they don't overuse these themes too much, and the game feels fresh all the way through. Exploration is a pretty big part of this game. It's not really an open world game, but there are a lot of collectibles scattered throughout the world, and finding these collectibles opens up a lot of the backstory that really fleshes out the storyline. Sort of similar to maybe like Assassin's Creed, where you can get through the main storyline and get most of it, but to really understand what's going on truly, you have to find the collectibles. My one gripe about these collectibles is once you find them, you don't have the ability to zoom in on them and actually see the wording on certain letters and newspaper articles. And while this game is on PlayStation 4 and PC with high-res texture maps. You can read it, but you sort of have to get your face a couple inches away from your screen, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of allowing you to read these in the first place. I was particularly a fan of the sound design in this game. It has an overall kind of minimalist approach where to lend to that feeling of sort of isolation and loneliness. It's very sparse, but when the music does come in, it's at key moments and it actually has some impact to it. And that also brings up the voice acting in the game. So the main character, Dee Dee, is obviously voiced by a child voice actor.
Wait! It's a whirlpool! He's sucking us down! We're sinking! We're doomed! It's Davy Jones blocking for us!
And as you can tell by the way I am speaking in this video, sometimes if you're not a professional speaker, it sounds kind of awkward. So it would have been nicer, I think, to have seen a professional voice actor. Frankly, the character is kind of annoying to me. I made a comparison to her to Clementine from The Walking Dead. Really enjoyed that character. I had a connection with her. Dee Dee, not so much. And actually, just playing around with the settings, I put the game on French mode to listen to the French dialogue, and I really like the French dialogue better, but there's no option to actually play the game with French voices, but keep the rest in English. So maybe in a future patch, the developers will consider putting that in.
Ok, elle est partie! Elle va chanter au Gosness ce soir. C'est le plus beau des cabarets.
The game's not without its share of bugs. I sort of get this feeling when you play through it that the developers always had one certain way in mind how to solve a puzzle. And you might find yourself trying to solve a puzzle in the alternate way, and a couple of times that's led me to getting stuck inside of objects or unable to move, and it was never bad enough to the point where I had to restart a checkpoint. Usually if you struggle enough, you'll just sort of fall through the floor and respawn. Contrast is a pretty short game. You'll find yourself going through most of the game in about 5 to 6 hours. But with all the collectibles and luminaries and other little nice Easter eggs that they've put in the game, you can find yourself probably clocking 10 plus hours. It should be noted that if you're a PlayStation 4 owner and you have PlayStation Plus, this game is available to you totally free of charge. And it's also, I think, appropriately priced on Xbox Live, PlayStation 3, and PC right now. I wouldn't really consider Contrast as a next-gen launch title. I've had the chance to play it on PlayStation 4 through Game Skinny. If you guys watch, if you're one of those 5 people that watched the Twitch stream of me playing it, I didn't see any real noticeable differences between the PC version, which I did this review off of, and the PlayStation 4 version. There were a few graphical glitches actually in both versions, where you're looking at shadows and they're like a stray vertex will pop off of it, but they were pretty sparse, and overall the game's still very beautiful. Doesn't really look next gen though. Aside from nice lighting, shadow effects, and high-res textures, you'd be hard to find any difference between the next gen version and the current gen version. So given an amount of content for the price point that it's marketed at, I'd give Contrast a solid 8 out of 10. It's probably hasn't been on too many people's radar, especially as a PlayStation 4 launch title. Thankfully, when Drive Club was delayed, it sort of pushed Contrast into the spotlight a little bit more as one of the free PSN titles offered.
And so the princess and Fred lived happily ever after. Fred never had to go on another adventure again, and they had hot buttered muffins every morning.